boys going through puberty, public high schools, and female teachers with two big life lessons. What could possibly go wrong? Well, turns out everything, because our protagonist, who is a teenage boy, always finds himself in situations that you and I can only dream of.
It should have been me, not him!
Trust me, even Batman and the Tibetan monks would fail in these situations if they didn't have the plot armor. I know you gooners had a crush on one of your school teachers, so comment below the name of that teacher and let's start. Here's the name of the manga we are recapping today, so let's go. Makoto Kurabyashi groaned in frustration as he was getting no jobs after graduating from Andrew Tate's Hustler University. His friend asked if he was talking about his part-time housekeeping gig, when Makoto expressed his disappointment about not even getting a single client. His buddy thinks people probably prefer hiring adults over students, which stung our boy more than it should. But then the conversation took a sharp turn when his friend started fantasizing about being taken care of by Hotta Sensei, a name Kurabyashi wasn't familiar with. His friend pointed ahead, saying the teacher he was talking about is right there. A gorgeous teacher named Rumiko walked by them, instantly commanding everyone's attention like a celebrity spawn. Female students swarmed her, complimenting her shoes with the kind of energy usually reserved for K-pop idols. Kurabyashi whispered that she seems very popular, and his friend explained that Hotta Sensei was beautiful, cheerful, and made classes fun. But the real thing that made her popular was her exceptional figure and adult charm. While his friend was explaining why Hotta Sensei was the campus crush, Kurabyashi, being the man of culture he is, was staring at her extra-large-sized milker, mumbling about how big her chest was without thinking. His friend caught him lacking and immediately called him a closet pervert, but Kurabyashi quickly denied the allegations. Suddenly, a calm voice interrupted them and told the boys they were making a lot of noise. Both of them turned to see Hotta Sensei standing right there and started blushing after seeing front-row view of her milk jugs. They folded immediately and bowed so fast they could have snapped their spines. She smiled and said it was fine as long as they understood. Up close, Kurabyashi was completely mesmerized by her beauty. She was even prettier than he thought, which left him stunned for a moment. But then he looked down and noticed something concerning. One of the buttons on her blouse was hanging on for dear life, as if it was Spider-Man from the train scene. He wanted to warn her about it. But how do you tell your teacher that her button's about to fall without her thinking that you were staring at her chest? But due to analysis paralysis, he couldn't say anything and she ended up walking away, waving them goodbye. After she was gone, his friend teased him again, saying he must be into big breasts since he couldn't stop staring at Hotta Sensei. Later that evening, Kurabyashi was at home steaming a shirt when he wondered if he should give up on his part-time housekeeping job altogether, since he wasn't getting any clients. He looked at the clock and realized his older brother was going to be late from work today as well. Makoto wished he wouldn't overwork himself so much, but just then he received a phone call. Thinking it was his brother, he answered casually, but a woman's voice came through instead. She apologized for calling so late and asked if she was speaking to Kurabyashi from the housekeeping service. It was someone from the agency, and she began explaining the reason for her call, and Kurabyashi listened carefully. Finally, he had landed his first client. Soon after, he stood outside a tall apartment building and reached room number 403. He was nervous for his first real job, but determined to crush it no matter what. He had accepted the last-minute request right away and wanted to do his best. He rang the doorbell, but no one answered. He started to worry that he came to the wrong place. He checked his phone to confirm the client's name and address. But then the door suddenly slammed open, smacking him right in the face like a perfect no-scope sniper headshot. Hotta Sensei was startled when she saw Makoto crumpled on the ground. Unaware it was him, she apologized and asked if he was hurt. Makoto told her he was fine, but upon looking up, he saw a woman with loosely buttoned blouse giving him a glimpse of those heavenly jiggly puffs that he wasn't expecting. He jumped back like he'd been electrocuted and blurted out her name. She froze for a moment, but then looked at the he was wearing and asked if he was one of her students. Panicking, Makoto stood up and introduced himself at maximum volume, Makoto Kurabyashi from Major High School. Before he could finish, she grabbed his tie and yanked him inside, slamming the door shut instantly. She then scolded him, calling him an idiot for shouting his name in the hallway like that. She explained that people would misunderstand their situation and think she was inviting a student over for some after-school activities, you know the ones I'm talking about. But then she face-planted herself on the ground, telling Makoto that she is hungover and yelling was making her headache worse. Makoto looked at her closely, confirming it really was Hotta Sensei. But looking at her smudged makeup, messy hair and wrinkled clothes, he couldn't believe how different she looked from her flawless image at school. The mangaka then blesses us with a nice view of Hotta Sensei's bakery buns, when she asks Makoto how much his service costs for one day. When he says 100 yen, she decides to hire him for one day. Makoto's brain can't handle this level of happiness and freezes for a moment. He couldn't believe that he had landed a client and asked Hotta Sensei if she was sure, but knowing the cancellation process is a waste of time and money, she decided it was best to hire him. She warned him that the place was pretty messy, but he confidently said he was used to cleaning up after his brother, so it won't be a problem. But the moment he stepped in her room, Kurabyashi froze completely because it looked like an absolute war zone. Empty bottles scattered like landmines, trash piled in corners, it looked like a typhoon hit a college dorm. Sensei laughed awkwardly, while all Makoto could do was nod slowly, questioning every life decision that led him to this moment. Makoto got back to cleaning while Sensei casually dropped the bombshell that she was going to take a bath. But before going, she told him he could do anything he wanted, but touching her computer was off limits. That last part had the energy of a biblical commandment. Then suddenly, he asked if she could hand over the blouse she's wearing right now. Hotta Sensei froze for a moment and asked if he was one of those weirdos who like to sniff clothes. I am those weirdos, by the way. Makoto's soul left his body after that accusation, and he explained that one of the buttons was coming off, so he thought it would be safer to fix it while cleaning. Hotta Sensei told him she would give it later and entered the bathroom. Left alone, Makoto analyzed her room and pointed out it wasn't just messy, this was a disaster. He got back to work, gathering clothes, tossing trash, and breaking down cardboard like a man fighting for his dignity. While lifting a towel, he noticed it was quite heavy. He turned it around and something unexpected was tucked inside. His face heated up instantly and he hastily wrapped it back up. Before Makoto could recover from this shock, he noticed a bunch of Sensei's undergarments lying around and wondered if all women have their undergarments lying around like this. He rolled them up nicely and finally caught his breath. But just as he started regaining focus, Hotta Sensei came out of the bathroom and said, "Here's the blouse." He turned around and saw her wrapped in a towel, which made me hard and difficult to focus on the plot. But then she casually crawled up next to him and decided to grab on her double D bra from the pile behind Makoto. She pointed out some clothes had already been cleaned and told him that she is leaving the rest to him. While Sensei was taking a shower, our boy was hustling for those 100 yen and folding clothes with 100% diligence. After what felt like hours of scrubbing, Makoto finally stepped back and admired his work. The living room was sparkling, just like my favorite doctor's bald head. Suddenly, Hotta Sensei appeared behind him and asked what was he muttering about. His first instinct? Pure relief that she was finally dressed like a normal human being. Makoto then looks down at her legs and realizes she isn't wearing anything. But Sensei casually lifts her t-shirt and shows him that she was wearing shorts. The shorts were technically there, just doing the bare minimum. Makoto immediately turned away like it was some sort of a jump scare and pretended to clean an invisible spot on the floor. He told himself he had just managed to calm his nerves down, so why was he being tested again? Then her stomach let out a loud growl, admitting she was starving. Lucky for her, Makoto had already prepared a Michelin star dinner, which was looking very oishi. Her eyes lit up like she'd found a treasure when she saw the pickled vegetables. She praised his cooking skills and asked how he knew she liked them, but he reminded her that she'd literally written it on the service request form. As she picked up her chopsticks and took the first bite, Makoto held his breath, nervously waiting for her reaction. The moment the food hit her tongue, a single tear rolled down her cheek. Makoto panicked instantly, wondering if his food tasted that bad. He panicked and reached forward to take the plate away. Before he could, Hotta Sensei grabbed his hand firmly and stopped him. "I used to love my grandmother's pickled vegetables," she said in a soft voice. "I thought I would never be able to enjoy that same taste again," she told Makoto. Realizing she wasn't crying from disappointment, Makoto finally relaxed. Still holding his hand, she asked if his hands were of her grandmother's. Completely thrown off by her comments, Makoto's brain short-circuited and he blurted out his own name in pure confusion. She quickly snapped back to reality and apologized for getting too emotional. After a short pause, Hotta Sensei looked at him and started listing his good qualities one by one. He was hardworking, sincere, thoughtful, and surprisingly skilled in the kitchen. But above all, his vegetable pickles were the best. Pointing her finger towards him, she grabbed his attention and made a decision. With the confidence of a CEO making a business decision, she told him, "I've decided to hire you as my part-time housekeeper." Makoto stared at her, asking if she was being for real, and she nodded without hesitation. However, she had some conditions, but at this point, our boy was ready to even drink her bath water if it meant securing the job. Suddenly, she whipped out a terms and condition paper with 12 clauses, all this while smiling like she'd already hired him. Makoto stared at it in disbelief because this thing looked like a legal contract for mortgage, and hesitated before signing it. After one last look, he finally signed the contract, wondering what kind of literal booby trap he'd just signed himself into. Sensei clapped happily, saying she could now eat his pickled vegetables every day. As he watched her smile so genuinely, he couldn't help but think how cute she was. but then her expression suddenly hardened and leaning forward, she warned him in a low voice that if he ever broke the contract, she'd drag him down with her. Makoto nodded quickly, realizing he'd just signed a deal with the devil in a bathrobe. Then in a teasing tone, Hotta Sensei called his name and told him to keep their relationship a secret. Makoto's brain instantly short-circuited and turned bright red, while stammering the word, Sensei. He tried backing away because she was getting a bit too close, but Hotta leaned in even closer and told him she would keep his promise. Their faces were inches away from each other and then he sat there drenched in sweat and stared at the ceiling, realizing it was all a dream. A wet dream to be specific. Later that morning at school, one of his friends pointed out that he looked awful for a Monday. Makoto said he'd had a weird dream, internally admitting it was actually kind of amazing. It had been 2 days since his first housekeeping job at Hotta Sensei's apartment. So many things have happened since then and he still couldn't fully process whether it was real. But then a terrifying thought hit him: what if the entire visit was part of the dream too? He shook his head immediately, rejecting the idea that it ever happened in the first place. But then someone called Hotta Sensei's name and his heart skipped a beat. Down the hallway, Hotta Sensei walked like a runway model and greeted students with her signature radiant smile. Their eyes met for a split second, but before either of them could speak, Makoto panicked and sprinted in the opposite direction as if his life depended on it. He tried calming himself by remembering her messy and exhausted look at home, but his teenage brain kept replaying the dream version, which made things hard. In his pants, his friend noticed him acting insane and asked if he was alright. Meanwhile, Makoto was wheezing in the hallway like he'd just run a marathon. Deciding survival was the priority, he concluded the only solution was to avoid looking at her at all cost. Or so he thought, because no matter where Makoto went, she was there. Hallways, classes, stairs, it was like she is a recurring NPC. He took a deep breath before going to the class and told himself he needs to hurry before she noticed him. But then someone grabbed his arm and yanked him into an empty room. Makoto nearly passed out on the spot when he saw Hotta Sensei was pinning him against a wall with one of her juicy leg pieces. She demanded an explanation to know why he kept acting so suspicious around her, and honestly, if I was an undercover agent I would have spilled the intel, because how could you resist those thighs, man? She reminded him firmly that they were supposed to keep things professional at school, but if he kept behaving like this, she'd cancel their contract entirely. Flustered, Makoto admitted he was just nervous because she was really pretty and he couldn't help but stare at her. Hotta Sensei paused for a moment but then smiled slightly, saying it's natural for our eyes to be drawn to beautiful things. She told Makoto that she will let it slide this time, but if she caught him lacking next time, he knows what would happen. As she left the room, Makoto stood there afterward, wondering what happened to his life. When he got back to the classroom, his friend greeted him casually, completely unaware of the psychological warfare that I would like to be a part of. Makoto had just survived. He asked what took him so long, but Makoto just laughed, asking if the class hadn't started yet. As if summoned by fate, a teacher walked in and the class started. The classroom was buzzing with chatter while Makoto closed his eyes and promised himself that he'd lock in starting tomorrow. The teacher quieted the class and announced their homeroom teacher had to return to their hometown for a while. Until their original teacher returns, Hotta Sensei will act his as replacement. Makoto's brain short-circuited when they made eye contact, both realizing that things were about to get really complicated. We then see Makoto running through the streets, out of breath. Turns out he is late from his housekeeping job since he had to make some preparations. It had been a week since Hotta Sensei became his homeroom teacher. He still remembered how pale she'd gone when she first spotted him in class, like her soul briefly left her body. But to her credit, she recovered instantly and kept things very professional. Despite his own awkwardness about the whole situation, her strict but kind encouragements helped him focus on the tasks. Makoto arrived at Hotta Sensei's apartment for his second housekeeping session and rang the doorbell. When the door opened, he froze for a moment because she was wearing tight workout clothes. He entered her apartment and asked why she was wearing those clothes. Cheerfully, she told him she'd decided to try yoga for the first time in a while. Makoto asked if she was doing it for flexibility, but Hotta Sensei revealed she had gained a few pounds and wanted to lose them. Telling him not to worry about her, she waved him toward his cleaning duties. While Makoto scrubbed and organized her place, Hotta Sensei struggled through her yoga routine and groaned as well. This pushed our boy's mind into the gutter and he started having unholy thoughts in his head. Thinking if he looked away, Hotta Sensei's presence won't affect him, but her voice alone was enough to completely derail his concentration. Eventually, she collapsed onto the mat and declared herself too stiff for this type of stuff. Thinking she was finally done, Makoto turned around and asked if she was finished. She said no and called him over. Confused, he approached her cautiously, but then she asked him to help push her lower back to deepen her stretch. At this point, I just wish I got reincarnated as Hotta Sensei's tank top. Makoto was going insane after touching her lower back and barely managed to keep himself together in that highly stimulating situation. After a while, he told Hotta Sensei that he'd be going back to his cleaning chores. But there were 30 minutes remaining, and with a cheerful smile, Hotta Sensei asked him to join her yoga session. By the end, Hotta Sensei stretched happily and said she felt refreshed and energized. She thanked Makoto, who was on the ground after the exhausting session. She asked him why he looked so tired, and he sarcastically answered, "I wonder why." But deep down, he silently vowed to never help her with yoga again, ever. As he packed up, she leaned in and said having someone there to assist you increases the improvement rate, asking if he'd help again sometime. Flustered, he immediately said no, but then added that he'd reconsider only if he was allowed to use earplugs and gloves.